Hey guys, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today's video is the first video on the channel featuring a build from Arc 3.0, and it's a revamp of my God of Thunder build, which is one of the first builds I ever put on this channel. First off, I am a huge fan of Arc 3.0, not only because of the movement tech, but also because a lot of the compatibility and synergy with other Arc-based effects, as well as new tech for us Titans out there, such as with Thruster ability and the Thunderclap ability. Hunters and Warlocks also got some incredible tools, so I will definitely be doing builds on them in the future. Before we get into it, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see down in the comments below, as well as any recommendations for future builds. Thanks in advance. Starting off, we're on Arc 3.0 Striker. I personally prefer Thundercrash just because it's a nice burst DPS option. However, if you would rather use Fist of Havoc, you can totally do that. Again, I just prefer Thundercrash. I will say though that we are going to be featuring a swap to exotic that enables Thundercrash to be a lot better for today, so I'd highly recommend going with that. As far as abilities go, I'm actually going to go with Thruster because it enables a more mobile playstyle that I actually prefer with a build like this, and also it's the fastest natural cooldown for our class ability compared to Towering Barricade and Rally Barricade. For melee, I'm personally going to go with Seismic Strike. You can go with literally any of them, but I prefer Seismic just because of ease of use, and then also its blinding effect is actually really useful in PvE. For Grenade, I'm personally going to choose Storm Grenade. It's one of my favorite out of all of the new ones we've unlocked, and for this build, if you don't want to go with Storm, I would recommend you either use the Lightning Grenade or you either use the Pulse Grenade. And the reason for that is dealing with our aspect as well as a few other fragments that we'll have. The first aspect we're using is Touch of Thunder, and this is why I kind of limited those grenade selections down a bit. Basically, it makes your Flashbang, Pulse Grenade, Lightning Grenade, and Storm Grenade all enhanced in some way. Your Flashbang Grenade emits another Blinding Flash on its first bounce, which is, I mean, it's good, I guess, but in terms of what the other three can do, it just simply doesn't stack up. For your other grenades, for your Pulse, it lets it create Ionic Traces periodically, and its damage increases over time. For your Lightning Grenade, it grants you an additional grenade charge, and it can allow it to jolt targets hit by it, which can then spread to other enemies and deal damage. And your Storm Grenade, which again is the one I'm going with, allows it to create a roaming thundercloud that tracks enemies after it hits, and it fires a bunch of bolts of lightning down and can deal some actually decent damage over time. The other aspect, we're going with Knockout. This is something that was present on Bottom Tree Striker. In short, whenever you break a target's shield or you critically wound them, your melee attack has increased range and damage. And of course, defeating a target with your melee allows your health to start regenning and makes you amplified. And amplified increases your movement speed and your weapon handling. The first fragment is Spark of Discharge, and this allows your arc weapon Final Blows to have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. And in short, an Ionic Trace is basically a tracking elemental well that gives you ability energy when you pick it up. This is going to enhance the ability spam of this build even more so than it already is with our exotics and our mods today, so I highly recommend getting this just to make everything more potent. Spark of Resistance allows you to have increased damage resistance when you're surrounded by combatants. Spark of Magnitude allows your Lightning Grenade, Pulse Grenade, and Storm Grenade, which is why I recommended those three earlier on anyway, to have extended duration. And Spark of Shock allows your arc grenades to jolt targets, and again, jolting can also damage nearby enemies that aren't even hit by your grenade in the first place. I do want to point out though, before we go any further, that there is currently a known bug with Arc 3.0. If you play on Titan or Warlock on Arc 3.0, your damage resistance is going to be 0%. Now, I don't know why that is. Bungie has addressed that they know it's an issue and they're currently investigating at the time of this recording, but just know that if you go into PvE, you're going to have a lot less damage resistance than you might commonly do, especially Titans out there that normally rock 100 tier resilience. So if you go into the PvE trying this build and you're starting to take a lot more damage than you normally do, that's why. As soon as this bug is fixed, this build specifically will be much more tankier and be much more viable in higher end content. Just at the moment though, the bug is causing a 0 tier resilience effect for Titans and Warlocks. Getting right into the armor and the mods then. For a helmet, we're using Bountiful Wells, and this basically allows any well generation that we have to have a double well spawn with it. As far as other mods go, you can really rock whatever you want. You can do Ashes Assets for increased super gain. You can have ammo finders to support a specific weapon you want to use. You can use Siphon mods and gen Orbs of Power, really whatever fits your playstyle. For our gauntlets, we're going to be using Font of Might, and basically anytime that we pick up an Arc Elemental Well, it's going to give our Arc weapons a 25% damage boost in PvE. And for other mods, we're really just pairing it with anything that can help get our abilities back as fast as possible. Something like Focusing Strike is a 1-cost seasonal mod this season, and this allows you to pair it with Kickstart mods or other mods you might not have been normally able to pair it with because of its void restriction. And something like Focusing Strike allows you to get class ability energy when you cause damage with your melee, which we're doing a ton of. I decided to pair it with a Grenade Kickstart just so whenever our grenade is used, it gives us about 20% back intrinsically at base. However, if you're facing champions in your current activity, this is where you can slot in those champion mods. Onto our chest piece, and our exotic for today is Heart of Inmost Light. In short, whenever you use your grenade, melee, or barricade, it empowers your other abilities, giving them a faster regen and makes them more potent. For your grenade and melee, that means it does more damage. For your barricade, it means it gives it more hit points. Now, I do want to point out that since we're using the Thruster ability, we don't have any increased movement speed or reduced end lag with that. We just benefit from the increased regen. Since the Thruster ability has the fastest natural cooldown, it means we can spam that a lot more often and empower our other abilities. For mods, we're going to be using Melee Wellmaker. For other mods, I'm personally rocking a Resist mod as well as a Machine Gun Reserve just to benefit our heavy weapon we're using with this build. However, if you want to have any combination of Resist or Reserve mods, you can absolutely do that. The other exotic chest piece that's going to serve as a hot swap exotic is the Cuirass of the Falling Star, which in short doubles the damage that Thunder Crash does, which is why I recommended it earlier. You can combine this with the Thunderous Retort seasonal mod, which allows your Thunder Crash to deal even more damage when you're amplified or critically wounded. After testing, combining Thunder Crash with Cuirass of the Falling Star and that Thunderous Retort seasonal mod, it makes Thunder Crash one of, if not the best burst DPS options for super in the entire game. You simply function with Heart of Inmost Light for around 95% of this build, and then simply when you get your super and want to use it, you just swap to this chest piece real quick and you're good to go. Even without the Thunderous Retort seasonal mod, this doubling your damage is absolutely insane. For our legs, we're rocking Elemental Ordnance, which allows our Arc Grenade to spawn Elemental Wells on kill. As far as other mods go, you can rock something like a Machine Gun Scavenger, as well as something like Absolution, which allows faster ability regen when you pick up an Orb of Power. There's a ton of different options to choose from here, so again, choose what fits best with your playstyle. And then finally onto our mark. The first mod we're using is the new seasonal mod, Lightning Strikes Twice. In short, after you throw an Arc Grenade, you gain an increased grenade recharge for a short period of time. Now normally this recharge rate is only about 3 seconds. It actually isn't that noticeable whenever you just simply throw your grenade and do nothing else. The point we're taking advantage of though is that we're going to be getting so many arc kills that they extend the duration of this basically indefinitely. And when we consider the fact that this recharge rate is basically omnipresent with all the arc kills we're getting, we can combine this with the empowering effect as well as the intrinsic effects for getting our grenade back, and that means that we're basically always throwing a grenade or have a grenade active on the field at all times. And when you consider the fact that our storm grenade now tracks and lasts longer intrinsically, this means that we're basically throwing grenades, constantly getting grenade kills, and benefiting from all sorts of different effects because of it. As far as other mods go, I'm using Bomber just to give us even more grenade energy back when we use our class ability. And again, that class ability is then tied to Heart of Inmost Light, which allows for empowerment to occur. Again, benefiting the ability spam aspect of this build and taking it to a whole nother level. And also Bad Amplitude, which is just kind of a one-cost seasonal mod that I just kind of threw in here. Basically, when you damage a champion with an arc ability, it causes them to become jolted, and this means that not only can our grenade naturally jolt them, but now our melees could as well. However, I do highly recommend using something like Amped Up instead. I just don't have the XP for that currently, and this basically just allows you to stay amplified longer, so I'd highly recommend using that. But again, you can use either, and depending on your activity, that champion mod may be way more useful than Amped Up. As far as weapons go, we can really use a wide variety of weapons. I'm going to be showcasing a few of my favorites. The first one is Thunderlord, and if we're doing a God of Thunder 3.0 build, how can we not use Thunderlord? Not only did this get a overload effect at the start of the season, but its new catalyst allows it a sort of subsistence effect on Lightning Strike, which means that you basically never have to reload this thing, which allows us to take full advantage of lightning rounds and the higher rate of fire for much longer. Meaning that this thing is absolutely disgusting in PvE in terms of ad clear, and even single target damage isn't that bad considering we can unload the entire mag all at once. And again, since we intrinsically can generate stuff like Ionic Traces on multi-kill, this is fantastic. This benefits our entire build so well. In my opinion, this is the go-to exotic for this build. Not only can its multi-kills generate Ionic Traces, which basically act as secondary elemental wells for us, but it can also benefit from the 25% buff of Font of Might nearly constantly considering how many wells we're spawning all the time. In terms of ad clear, and even some cases with single target damage, this thing is absolutely disgusting, and with the new catalyst, it's one of my favorite exotics in PvE, especially for arc-based gameplay. Another arc exotic I would recommend is the Warclip Foil. While this thing might not do so good against bosses, in ad clear, it's really disgusting, and with the catalyst giving it enhanced tracking, you basically just point and click, and anything on your screen dies with this thing. Well, it's not really my favorite because of its poor ammo economy and sometimes inconsistency. With Font of Might active, this thing hits like a truck and basically kills anything on your screen that isn't a boss. The other weapon I want to recommend is Storm Chaser, and this is the linear fusion from Duality. This is one of my favorite weapons, and it was actually the weapon that I used most often in the King's Fall Day 1 raid. This thing hits like a truck and can roll with a variety of different perk combinations, benefiting you in a lot of situations. I personally prefer firing line and autoloading, but you can get stuff like rapid hit or vorpal weapon on this thing. There's a ton of different options you can use, and it's definitely my legendary recommendation for this build. And then finally, if you're interested, you can always use Tractor Cannon just to benefit Thunder Crash even further with the Cuirass of the Falling Star swap, as well as Thunderous Retort. The debuff from Tractor Cannon plus Cuirass of the Falling Star plus Thunderous Retort makes your super hit like a truck and basically one-shots anything outside of strike bosses and raid bosses. This thing is absolutely necessary if you're trying to push out the most damage possible with your Thunder Crash. Another weapon I want to recommend is Forbearance. I don't have the double enhanced roll, but you can get Enhanced Chain Reaction, Enhanced Ambitious Assassin, which allows this thing to have absolutely insane potential with PvE in terms of ad clear as well as support for this. Plus, the intrinsic effect of Soul Drinker basically means that anytime that you get a kill, since it's a special weapon, you're gonna have full health after you reload. Another one I recommend that's also a grenade launcher is Salvage or Salvo. This can roll with a variety of trait combinations. I personally prefer Chain Reaction and Demolitionist, again, just benefiting the grenade aspect of this build. And the interesting thing with both of these is you can even put on Spark of Beacons with it, and while you're amplified, it allows them to have a blinding effect on multi-kill, basically turning these into blinding GLs intrinsically. Another thing I want to point out that is kind of disappointing is Chain Reaction does not benefit from Spark of Beacons, meaning that the blinding effect is actually smaller than the chain reaction effect, meaning that you're going to kill most adds in that initial chain reaction explosion, and anything outside of that isn't going to get hit by that explosion and won't often be blinded. So just keep that in mind. But really, any other arc weapon works great with this build. Something like Insidious is a great choice. You can even use something like the Ikelos SMG, which is a favorite of mine. Anything with Demolitionist or Adrenaline Junkie or Swashbuckler works great with this build, as well as new Season 18 weapons that have intrinsic melee-based perks and origin traits. Then a few honorable mentions in my case. Something like Cold Heart would be great in PvE. With Trace Rifles getting a buff in a past season that basically made them monsters and ad clear for PvE, Cold Heart is an obvious choice. Something like Trinity Ghoul is just one of the best ad clearing weapons in the entire game, hands down. And with Font of Might active, this thing hits like a truck. Highly recommend this, especially with its catalyst, granting it basically infinite lightning rod effects. And then of course something like Divinity, which can not only stun overload champions, but can also serve as a debuff globally for everyone in the activity you're doing. This thing fits perfectly with this build if you're interested, and I'm sure anyone in the activity that you're using this with will thank you for it, considering the global debuff you're putting on every single enemy they come across. But that's pretty much it for the build today, guys. Honestly, this is one of my favorite builds on Titan, period. I know it's a bit of an old build that I've revamped with Arc 3.0, but I love it even better in the 3.0 system than before. The ad clearing with this build is absolutely insane, and again, the effectiveness of a hot swap to Grasp of the Falling Star grants an ad clearing focused build the highest damaging super in the game, if not one of the highest. So the overall potency of this build and the versatility of it is nearly unmatched. This is definitely going to have a permanent spot in my inventory, and it's only going to get better as we unlock more seasonal mods to pair with it. Again, I really hope you guys like this build. Let me know what you thought of it down below, as well as any recommendations for future builds. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate the support on these builds. If you like the video, be sure to like it and subscribe for more Destiny 2 content like this. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one.